Good evening and welcome to Drie, Bokke, a ball and BlitzBOD. Of course, we are part of the greater, amazing family that is Three Blokes, a Ball and Bod. Well, Joe's let me in with another cheeky little show, and I will be joined in a minute. I promise you haven't got to listen to me for an hour. But we are doing a show that I've wanted to do for a very, very long time now. We've managed to pull it together tonight because of the two guys that I really wanted on this show. Mainly because I know both of them and I've worked with them in the past, or even gone to school maybe with one of them. But firstly, thank you very much to our sponsors, Workshop 17, for their continued support, sat in the beautiful surroundings. Please check out their website, guys. Locations in the Western Cape in Gauteng, one in Paarl here, there's two in Cape Town. As well as in Gauteng, there is one at the fire station in Rosebank, and of course West Street in Santon. Co-working spaces are going to be the future, guys, because everyone's realising now that they don't need to spend so much money on an office space for so many people, and working remotely is good. But go and check them out, guys. They got all the facilities you would ever need for your business. So please do it. Yeah, let me start by just saying the reason I wanted to do this show tonight and worked with Joe on this is because it's very close to my heart. I know plenty of people that have suffered with mental health. Unfortunately, some of them aren't with us anymore, which makes it even more sad. But close to the family, friends, I think it's very prevalent in society at the moment, and it's certainly with this lockdown and coronavirus, we're all being tested. The two gentlemen that are coming on tonight have amazing stories to tell, and thankfully they are willing to share them with us. But the main aim of the show is not just to sort of hear stories and go, wow, that must have been pretty tough. We want people to come out and feel necessarily comfortable in talking about mental health. I personally ran a small study, if you like, last year on my website, scrum5rugby.com. Go and check that out. It's called At the Bottom of a Ruck, and lots of people wrote for us. And actually, off the back of that, there's been some amazing stories of rugby clubs. One of the guys who wrote for it happened to be my brother, and his rugby club now has a mental health group because a lot of the players came out and said that they are struggling, and they've started a group together now, and which is absolutely fantastic, which the chairman did down there. So well done to Nailsea Rugby Club, fantastic stuff. But let's get to it. Let's get some guys in there. So how do I know these gentlemen? Well, the first one I actually went to school with, believe it or not. And although I live in South Africa now, he still lives, no, he doesn't live in our hometown. He lives further north, but he has business in our hometown. 187 appearances for Exeter Chiefs, which was bookended by some time in Bristol and Bath. But his career ended in France very abruptly, which we will talk about later at Ajax. But he is a top man, and I'm very jealous because he's just waved a pint at me off screen. His name is Mr. Neil Clarke.
Hey guys.
Clarke, how are you?
I'm all right, mate. Thank you very much for having me on the show. It's always a pleasure. It's always nice to see a smiling face.
I try. The next man is probably used to be Clarkie's mortal enemy, I imagine. Although he says he's never been yellow carded by him, I don't believe that for a second. He's a former Premiership referee. He's now still a TMO. He's the first non-full-time ref to amass 100 games in the Premiership, and he's certainly well known for his no-nonsense approach to refereeing. He was one of my favourites in the past. It's Mr. David Rose.
Hi guys, thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Hey mate, how are you?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you very much. I'm
commitment in the lay-by there.
Yeah, I'm sat in a lay-by in North Devon. So it's not the most salubrious of surroundings, but hey, you know, I'm here.
Hey Rosie, I'm not sure this is the first time you've been in a lay-by, mate.
No, Clarke, you know what goes on.
On the window. Yeah.
Yeah,
Gents, I want to start at the very beginning. Good place to start. I know both of you had I don't know what the word is really. Not the most conventional childhoods, maybe, shall we say? And there's certainly some factors in your younger years that may have led to sort of ongoing issues later in the year. Clarke, do you want to start us off and just tell us a bit about your background and how you ended up in the rugby world, shall we say?
Wow, I mean, mate, to be honest, I was very, very fortunate. Had a great start to life. We went to primary school together, as he touched. Then went on to secondary school. I'm sure, as Andrew might actually allude to, I was probably not the nicest kid at school, but yeah, I mean, it started off great, and I'm sure as everybody's stories sort of change with the dynamics and how you sort of evolve into your life. But I mean, yeah, there was a few complications with growing up, and a divorce which didn't go too well, and me and my brother ended up pretty much on our own, and to now, and my brother, me and him are very, very close, and I have a good relationship with my parents now, which is great. But back in the day, let's be honest, when you don't have your mum around or you don't have your dad around, things are going to go wrong. And fortunately for me, I was picked up by, as Rosie would know very well, a guy called Mr. Robin Cowlin. And, to be fair to him, and then there was another gentleman with the England YDO, a guy called Frank Butler. And to be fair, I think he probably touched on it once when Bristol played Bath, and he introduced me to a couple of younger lads. And he basically said, this is Clarke, he's playing in the Prem. We helped him do this. And if it wasn't for me and this other coach, he said he'd probably be in prison. How true that is, I don't know. But there was probably a time where things didn't go so well. But I mean, I know Rosie will touch on it, and I know we've all been through it. Rugby was a great gift. It gave me everything. I got to, play for some amazing clubs, get international honours. Played for the Barbars, things like that. And there was a guy that come into my golf shop today, and he said, excuse my expression, because I'd give my left nut to have had any one of those games. And it's hard, but do you know what? Would you change anything? Would we do anything differently? I don't know. But the upbringing sometimes, it was definitely the factor that got me into rugby, and I owe rugby everything. I'm very grateful for the people that have helped me. Rob Baxter, Richard Hill. But then now that I've finished, and I'm quite open about it, I hate what rugby left me with. Whether that be the fact that I broke my neck, whether the fact that be that you haven't got 45 lads around you anymore, you don't have an expression, you can't be yourself anymore. And I'm very grateful for having a fantastic family around me now. Like I said, I have a very good relationship with my parents now. Me and my brother are tighter than ever, and we've got a business together. But it's a tough, and then sometimes it's a very, very bitter pill to swallow. And I'll let Rosie sort of jump in, but that's sort of pretty much how I got into rugby. I had a couple of injuries, cost me whatever it did, cost me a few caps, whatever it is. But I'm very, very grateful for what I personally achieved and for what rugby has given me. And so, without going on with how many games, who you've played for, and all this lot, it's to me, it's a little bit irrelevant. It's where we are now and how we get on with it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I obviously remember you from upper school as well, and comprehensive. And there, I don't know if I've ever told you this. I probably haven't, but I was in the quad that day after school. I actually witnessed that, and I won't go into too much detail, but let's just say that Neil,
everyone knows about it, even the wife.
It's in the book. It's in the book. Neil got.
I'm not sure if it is.
Is it that? Oh well, it is. It should be. Sure. It's going to be now. Neil got nudged against the locker, if I remember rightly, and I didn't see the beginning bit, but I heard the last bit, and it was. And I'm genuinely not joking about it. It was one of the best hooks I've ever seen. Right, but it actually. No, but all jokes aside, like it shook me. I was like year 7, 8. What were you? You must have been year 10 or something, year 11.
Yeah, a year older, aren't I? So
Well,
whatever it was, 9, 10.
You flicked a switch, which is, I think, is the phrase. And the poor lad was probably still lying there today, to be honest with you. But it obviously proves that rugby was a good thing for you, because that didn't end well.
And yeah, I don't want to cut in there, but the funniest thing with that is when I actually had my wife and we went down to Porthleven to check the surf. And, myself and Simon now, we get on very, very well. And we've been on a couple of surfing tours together over the years. And I bumped into him and we were chatting about the surf. And my wife turned around to me and she went, "Oh, my God, did you see the state of that guy's teeth?" And I went, "Yeah, I did that."
Yeah. I swear to you, one of the best punches I've ever seen throw, which we shouldn't really laugh about, but there was plenty of ceramics all over the floor after that. But it's only lasted
for 2 days after that.
Luckily, we've got some better memories after that on Boxing Days and stuff like that. But we won't go there either. David, for yourself as well.
The pits on a Sunday night.
I don't know what you're talking about. Never been there. David, yourself, I know some of the things that happened in your childhood, as you wrote in that amazing article you wrote for Scrum 5 last year. And again, thank you for that. You got into rugby because you wouldn't wear shin pads at football, which to be honest with you, mate, I admire you for that. But how did rugby help you from where you came from growing up?
I think I've said this before. I said it a few times, and it's a bit of a strange one. And I think for me, the rugby pitch and the sports pitch was like my safe space. It was a place where I could just go and kind of express myself and do things without any fear, really. And that sounds a bit strange because, as Clarke knows, when you're in front of thousands of people and whatever on TV, it can be quite scary. But I loved it, and I could forget everything that was going on in the outside world for that period of time when I was out on the pitch. And that kind of manifested itself as I got older, and I kind of reconciled a few things. If I go back to kind of the childhood thing, I mean, as I think I said in the piece, I had an abusive father who, some of the things that happened, I won't go into detail, but they were pretty traumatic, and they kind of shaped me for quite a while and affected me for quite a while. And the other piece, and it's something I've only really kind of thought about in the last few months in the wake of the George Floyd thing, is that I really struggled for my racial identity. And I didn't really realize the impact of that until, the last few years recently, really. And I go back to it and think, as a young kid growing up in Birmingham in the 70s and 80s, it was a pretty horrible place at times. There was a lot of racial trouble and there were lots of stuff that was going on that was unpleasant. And I didn't feel I fitted in with the white community or the black community, but I did with the rugby community. And that's why I say that combination of things led me into that safe space. And, from there, I think the game gave me a lot, but also, as Clarke says, when you come out of it, you realize how much it's taken from you as well. And it's kind of it's a bit like being in a washing machine. You get chucked around, and then you open the door and you get spat out, and then you get hung out to dry. And when you're out there, you're literally on your own in the wind, and you're looking around for somebody or something to try and help. And lots of people talk about, and Neil will talk about it better more than I, but the experience of playing and having those mates in the dressing room and things like that. For me, the thing I enjoyed the most was the pre-game dressing room experience, the post-game dressing room experience, and then the ability to have on-field banter with people like Clarke. And it was some of the things that you can talk to. Back it's a bit more difficult now because we were wired up, but not as much as they are nowadays, and people didn't really pay as much attention to what we were doing and saying. So you could have a lot of banter with people, and that you find an affinity with certain people, and that's the thing that I miss the most, is that affinity on the sports field that you'll never get again. And at some point, whatever level you play, that comes to an end. But I think the difference is when you've been at the top end of the game, there's a lot more factors to it that make it much harder to move away from. And I've said this to a lot of people about professional sport. It's a horrible, nasty, brutal world. Yeah. And when you're in it, it's great. And when you're out of it, and it's cutthroat. And once you're no longer used to anybody, you're gone, and it's on to the next. And you just walk away and forget it. And that's what people do to you. And that's not a criticism of any individual. That's just what happens. And it is what it is. But if you're on the receiving end of that, and you're left to pick up the pieces, it's hard. It's a hard place to be. It's a tough place to be.
Completely agree, mate.
I think, for you personally as well, I don't think let's just go back quickly to how me and you ended up connecting on Twitter, because you were quite brutally honest. You were like, I was doing this mental health stuff. I chatted to Clarke on the phone and stuff. And you were like, no one ever considers the rep.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And you were, that's literally all you said. No one ever does this for the rest. And I actually had that moment where I was like, who's this guy? And when you do that whole David Rose, David Rose, right? That sort of clicked on my head. And actually some of the stuff you wrote in that was so pertinent, because you live in this professional sports world. However, it must be an incredibly lonely place, because you're always traveling on your own, unless you go in Europe and you take a whole sort of team or whatever like that. You go into a stadium where, let's be honest, no one's going to like you even before you step on it. Whether we like you as a ref or not, you've got a target on your back from players, from fans, from the newspaper the next day. How hard is it to be a ref? That's what I'm like. Mentally, it must be extremely tough.
Yeah, it is. And I think, I'm not quite sure the exact number, but I think in the 25 years of professional rugby now, I think there's been less than 20 referees who've refereed consistently in the Premiership in England. So that tells you how difficult the job is, and how challenging it is, both mentally and physically. And you're right, everything you do on your own. Apart from that 80 minutes on a match day, your preparation, your training, your reviews, it's different now, because everyone's professional now. They weren't when I was doing it, and I was never a professional. So you're holding down a full-time job, you've got a family, and you're expected to perform as if it was your full-time job. And that's really hard, because you want to do it to the best of your ability. You go out and train your nuts off for 4 or 5 days a week. You do your analysis, you do all your homework on things. And then you go and do the game, and then you walk away from the game, get in your car, and you're on your own. You're not getting on a bus and from an away game. And this is the other thing: every game's an away game, as you say. So you've got all that time in which you're sitting there thinking, and then you might get somebody ring you up on the way back. How did it go? And you start thinking, oh well, this and that and the other. And then the next thing is you're dreading, the newspaper the following day, or if it's been a TV game, what's been said about you by the commentators and the pundits, and all of this is going through your head. And at that, and I was going through it, there was no real emphasis on, and I'm sure it was the same with Clarke, he was playing. Nobody's come and said to you and said, how are you, mate? How you doing? How do you feel? They did that from a conditioning perspective, but never from a mental perspective. So nobody looked at the top 2 inches and said, what's this doing to you? How are you feeling about this? And you kind of just get on that treadmill and plow on. And blokes being blokes and the sport being the sport, you just kind of say, right, I'll get on with it, crack on, and you just keep going and going and going. And when I used to go on holiday after the season finished, I would spend literally 3 days asleep, because I was just mentally exhausted. My partner would just say to me, fun. I'd say, just give me some time. And it literally would take me 3 days of just lying by a pool and just being asleep all day. And again, at the time, I didn't realise what that was. I didn't realise how I was suffering really badly mentally.
Yeah. And I think one of my biggest bugbears genuinely in the world at the moment is social media. And maybe this is one for Clarke, because I'm sure he's been around so many people who have got so many different views on social media. I hear about players getting into a changing room and they're literally in their pockets straight afterwards trying to pull it out. I'm sure after scoring a hat trick or playing really well, knowing they played really well, they're trying to lord it up. But how? Just be brutally honest, Clarke. This is why I wanted you on it, because you always are, and I love that. How bad is social media for professional sports?
Right. So are you ready for this one, boys?
I am, mate. Born.
I obviously started sharing on social media that I was doing this podcast with, a couple of my good mates. Rosie and he did my testimonial. When he just sort of go back to that, when what he was just saying there, be it like every game an away game, and I've now got a completely different appreciation now that I finished. And when he says that there, and you're like, I know how much they get scrutinised. I think I'm, to touch. I remember when we played Worcester at home. I was having probably the best line-out game I've ever had. And I probably threw a couple, which I would have been a bit borderline. And Rosie let me get away with it. And I was like, thanks, boy. I threw the straightest one of my life. And he did me for not straight. And I remember after that game, right, Rob was like, because we were just about to set up this like awesome drive. And he let Rosie have it. And just what he said there, it's so true. And mate, I completely, I feel terrible, because it's like, what you probably let me get away with during my game, and you've turned up, and I didn't realise that you weren't professional the whole time, and when we were, and for you to turn around and have to get the stick from the coaches for not giving a decision or giving something, you're only ever going to keep one side happy at a time. So if you kept Rob happy, you're pissing Richard Hill off or something like that, when it was Worcester. So, yeah, I feel terrible for that. But
no need, mate. No need.
Well, I've actually got a cracking
quote. Don't worry, mate. I've still got love for you. It's fine.
I've got
some tissues.
But social media today is a prime. I'm so glad you just brought this up, because you could not have timed this any better. I hung the phone up from you earlier on.
Yeah.
Right. I remember the player Alex Popham down in Wales. So I'm good friends with his cousin Rob Popham, right? Yeah. And he sends me this WhatsApp, and he's like, Clarke, you need to have a look at your Wikipedia. I went, what?
So I shouldn't laugh, but someone's nailed you. I've seen it.
Right. So I had to, luckily now with the business that I've got a fantastic girl that deals with all of my social media. I've got another lad that does my Instagram, but she generally does like pretty much most of everything that I can't do, which is quite a lot. So I ring her up and I'm like, Lily, you really need to help me out here. Right. So anyway, I've gone on to Wikipedia, and the first thing it says, Neil Clarke started career at Helston Ladies RFC. After successfully having a sex change, he then moved on to bigger things.
Yeah.
Bristol, Exeter. And I'm like, Pops has literally messaged me and gone, mate, you need to have a look at your Wikipedia. And I'm like, what? So when you talk about social media, I mean,
your control.
I've had nice things, and I'm sure, Rosie, you're exactly the same. And mate, to be fair, mate, I'm sure you're exactly the same. You get nice things said about you, you get bad things said about you. You know what it's like living in Cornwall, mate. We sit here, you go out 1 minute, you talk to someone, next minute, everyone's spreading a rumor. It's just insane. And I think the biggest thing, without harping on too much about and trying to answer the question, social media is it's a godsend, but I tell you what, it can destroy people. And if you're not headstrong, if you're not that type of personality, and Rosie will be the same, we've dealt with people, played against people that some of those that are very, very, very like strong-minded. and then others that pretend that they are, and really they're just caving in inside, and it's all about that persona. And then there's other people that are just weak as piss. And I'm sorry with my language, but there's no other way to skirt around the subject. The fact is, you've got some keyboard warrior at home, and you know, you just look at the way that the social media, and you have to forgive me because that poor girl, the one from Love Island, you know, all it takes is a couple of people to say the wrong thing. And look, life isn't as easy as everybody thinks it is. We finished this game, and I'm not, you know, I'm sure I speak for God knows how many people. We were very lucky, very privileged. But I tell you what, we worked our asses off to get to that point. Didn't have an amazing upbringing, didn't have this, didn't have academies, didn't do this. Working at Tesco at 5 o'clock in the morning and then going to Truro College and then going to Exeter. You know, you've got to put some graft in. If you want something, you've got to work for it, whether that be in business, whether that be in rugby or football, whatever it is. Somebody gives you an opportunity and you take it, fair play to you. If you don't, you're a mug. And that is genuinely how I feel about the whole situation, whether it be business, whether it be sport. But to go back to before I sort of move on, the social media thing is absolutely brutal. And the higher profile you get, the more stick you're going to get. You're going to get some guy, some girl that is literally going to give you their 2 pence worth, sat at home, watching Corrie, smashing in, you know, Ben and Jerry's, telling them that they could have done better if they had the opportunities we had. And I'll be honest with you, I think it's absolute bollocks. And if I wish some people nowadays, now that I can speak freely, I don't really care. I've got to the point now, I played with so many lads, played against them, I've made some friends for life. There are people that I thought that were my friends. I tell you now, they can do one. When you need someone and they're not there, someone says something, somebody says something behind your back. I don't have to pretend to be friends with anybody anymore. I don't have to hold my tongue. I'm my own person. You know, it doesn't mean I can go around and start smacking people in the face, because we're in the real world now, as people so say. Welcome to the real world. You know what the real world is? The real world is dealing with a situation and getting on with it. If you don't, move on. But social media, to me, I have to use it very much for my business, and it's a very focal point when it comes to business. But I hate it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, predating really kind of Twitter and what have you was like fans forums online, and every club had them.
Sorry, Rosie, we used to call those the poison boards.
Yeah,
and we always used to do that.
Yeah.
We always look after a game to see how you've played, and exactly like you said there, mate. Sorry to cut you off, but exactly like that. We used to go on the Exeter Chiefs forum, and I'd always look at it. Some lads wouldn't. I would always look at it to see what people would say about how you've played.
Yeah, and I did the same, because you're going to get stick, and you go on there, and you know, stupidly a couple of times I kind of made up a name, went on and posted something, and what the futility it pointed out to me really, in terms of trying to argue with people, and the people that Clarke has just described there, is you can tell them that black is black, and they'll say no, it's not, it's white.
Absolutely.
You know, you can quote the exact incident to them, the law, whatever. You can say, you know, I've watched the game back 10 times from 4 angles, and my decision was correct. No, you're not. You're this, you're that, you're the other. And you know, in the end, you just say, do you know what? Get stuffed. Absolutely get stuffed. But what I used to see was the absolute vitriol, and these are supporters of the club, so-called, giving their players absolute heaps of abuse. And you think, hang on a minute, these are the guys who, early that afternoon, you're at Sandy Park or the Rec or wherever, cheering that team on, and now you think that it's okay to go online and start abusing that person and saying he shouldn't even wear the shirt and he shouldn't do this. And, you know, I know everyone's got an opinion, but the online world is just such a toxic place where people feel they can just abuse you without any reason, and you can't have a reasoned debate with people. If you could do that, it's fine, you know. And the few times I used to go and do supporters evenings at clubs and things, and some of the people who run those clubs are brilliant people. They are really good. They've got the club at heart, and everything else. And you go along, and I'd always say, right, find me the biggest nose that's always slagging off me or any other referee. And I'd single them out, and I'd get them up, and I'd put a clip of an incident in a game and say, right, I want you to watch this, and I want you to make a decision at the end of watching this clip. I said it might be 5 seconds, it might be 10 seconds, it might be 30 seconds of play, but make a decision. And on every single occasion, they either couldn't make a decision, hadn't seen what happened, or got it completely wrong. And I used to say, fair enough, but you expect me as a referee to make that decision based on the same information when I'm got my heart rate at 180 beats a minute. I've just made 5 other decisions. I've got players in my ear. I've got spectators shouting and screaming, and I've got to make a cold, clinical, clear decision that's 100% accurate on every single occasion. You know, do me a favour. Nobody in any field of human endeavour is that good. Nobody. And
I'm not gonna lie to you, Rosie. I'm surprised you had anyone still sitting, mate.
But I'll also say to you, we used to have a scoring system with referees that started at 100, and you could only get worse.
Yeah, I completely agree.
On average, a good day you'd get between 87 and 93 was like, you know, subjectively a good day. When you think of a goal kicker, it was at 80 to 85%, it was considered world class. And you're getting 87 to 90, 93%, and that's probably average or the mean. You kind of go, well, hang on a minute, what are we comparing here? You know, a close skill like kicking a goal, or as Clarke used to do, you know, throwing into lineouts. And again, you know, appreciate the difference, chucking into a lineout when you might have had 3 reset scrums, you got up, it's gone through 2 rucks, someone's kicked into touch, it's your ball, you get up there, and you've got to then compose yourself to throw the ball in accurately when you're still probably shaking from the 2 rucks and 3 scrums. And again,
and Clarke is out breath from whinging.
Yeah, people don't. All that mental pressure is constant, and you're dealing with this all the time on top of everything else that you're trying to deal with. And it's no wonder.
Why on earth would you ever do me for not straight if you were that hair about? Come on, mate. Sympathy.
You must have said something that must have just. I thought, right, I'm having you next time, then, mate.
I reckon that game was pretty full on. I remember having one of my really good friends. I remember having a really good bust up with Sean Perry. Yeah. You know, we were very good friends at Bristol, and I remember me and him had a fight, and I remember you saying something to me, and then I don't know, I probably said something back. And then the next line out, who knows? Like I said, it was probably the straightest thing I've ever thrown in my career, and you called it for not straight.
To be fair though, Clarke, just going off subject slightly, I didn't penalise you that often.
No, mate, to be fair, Rosie, I think that's one of the only reasons why I like you.
And I definitely never yellow carded you. I'd never yellow carded you.
No, you know what? I was actually thinking about it, and it was so funny because Ash chirped up and said something, and I went, "Well, he definitely has." And then I remember against Wales, is it Tim Beddoe? He gave me a red card for headbutting and someone, and then I'm trying to. Is it Sean Davey? No.
Yeah, Sean. Yeah, Sean would have yellow carded
my chat. He hated my chat. I don't know how many games I nearly cost us for chirping up to someone after having a good scrum. I remember we were up at Newcastle on Friday night in the Cauldron, and I remember we absolutely smashed him in the scrum, and I came up and started shouting abuse, and I think is he an ex-teacher? Is that right?
Yeah, he's a teacher. Yeah.
And he just turned around and gone, "I'm not having that language." Gave away a penalty right in front of the sticks. They slotted it. Then Rob nearly beat the crap out of me at half time. You've cost us the game.
Well, David, for once we've got plenty of support for the refs in the comments tonight. So Joe Lyons has left a great comment for us to go through here. Joe can bring that up. Try. I'll read it anyway. There we go. Refs are the cement that gels the game. Unfortunately, the pressure and way they're treated is shockingly poor. And on a personal basis, they must have a very short shelf life mentally with the treatment they suffer. We should do better as fans, players, all levels of the game. 100%. Completely agree with you. Preach, brother.
Yeah,
Let's move on to injuries and lack of fitness. Clarke, you had a few in your time, mate. How hard are they to deal with when you're watching all your mates play rugby and you can't?
I mean, I think anybody that plays rugby. I had this conversation with somebody who walked through the door today. I said, at the end of the day, you can walk out onto the street and you could get hit by a bus. I remember when I dislocated my ankle and I ripped everything off it, and I had septicemia, hospitalised for 8 days, nearly lost my foot, rehabbing for 13 months. And I had a guy next to me with exactly the same injury that slipped, pissed, and fell off a curb. And it's like, it's one of those. But yeah, I mean, if we want to talk about my career, I think I had 17 major operations, 2 ACLs, medial, fracture dislocation, 4 shoulder repairs, 2 microfractures, reconstruction on the left side of my face. Believe it or not, I was handsome once before.
No, it didn't work.
Good job you're in South Africa. And then, a couple of discs out of my neck, which has left me with permanent nerve damage, which I know this is what this is all about. And I'm sure we'll probably come to it later on. But it's, that's left. I should, again, look at the positives and think, I was told a millimetre left or right to be in a chair. I'm very, very fortunate for that, and I'm very, very grateful. We played the game. We know what we're doing. I remember having Toby Booth. I bumped into him at I had him like one of my England, I think it was England 21s or something. I can't remember what it was. It was some international thing. And he was my coach. And he tried to get me to sign for Irish for quite some time. And I remember we were just flying back to France with the family, and Bath were going to Portugal. I think, they were going out for a training camp. And he went, "Oh, Clarke, how long you got left?" And we were just in the queue. And I went, "Oh, yeah, I've just signed another, 3 years. I've got 2 years left." He goes, "Away you hit, Rux, I'll give you 6 weeks." Yeah, I'd ended my career 4 weeks later from trying to smash someone as hard as I could. And I put 7 breaks in my face and 2 to 3 discs out of my neck. And yeah, I mean, look, cost you games, cost you honours, but, you miss an exam in business, costs you promotion. I think the biggest thing that I've learned is probably, one, you're very selfish as a sportsman. I'm very, very, I'm probably going to be paying for that for the rest of my life, because I think as an individual and the way that I think I was a very selfish person, whether that be with the family, whether that be with people around me, whether that be players that I played with. I had some good friends, but I think there was probably a lot of people that just didn't get me. And I always remember Mark Regan would always say, you'd be like me. You're going to be like Marmite. And Rosie knows what this saying. It's like, you either love him or you hate him. I think there was a lot of supporters that loved me and still do. And I think there was probably a lot of players, and a lot of supporters that hated me. And I think that's proved now that I've finished, because I don't hear from any of them. I've got a select group of friends. Again, Mark Regan, he said to me years ago, when we were at Bristol and I was just coming through, just got into the England A squad, and he went, "Bam, when you finish, if you can count your friends on one hand, you've done well." And I said, "Roddy, that's just because people hate you." But I'll tell you what, after finishing, he's right. He ain't far away. But I suppose, without saying too much, look, I played a lot of games. I'm very, very grateful for that. Yes, I probably could have played a damn sight more if I hadn't got injured when I did. But Rosie will probably, hopefully, back me up. When I tend to play, I would always wear my heart on my sleeve, and I'd always try and give everything I had, whether that be in a scrum, in a ruck, or whatever it be. And unfortunately, I got caught on the wrong side of a tackle, and You know, I've got friends around me that have had similar things and much worse situations than me. Good friend of mine, hooker, Chris Whitehead. I left. He was absolutely on fire. Again, you talk about clubs looking after you, and I don't care anymore. I can't even watch a game at Exeter anymore. I love that club. I love everything that club gave me. My name's on the trophy. But the fact is, yeah, I don't care. I don't care. You know, so why should I care? I don't.
Yeah.
You know, there is no loyalty in sport. I just wish people would tell you that when you're in the middle of it. You know, people say you should be lucky for what you've got. Oh, they look after you. They look up. Nah, you know, at the end of the day, they pay your wages. Yeah, that's fine. If I don't perform, I'm out that door. Simple as that. But, you know, Chrissy Whitehead, few injuries, Luke Cowan-Dickey, I think Jack Yendall. Chrissy, to be fair, he deserved this spot. And he'd had a banged up neck. And they turned around and they said, look, I tell you what, we'll get the docs in, you know, we'll get the docs in and we'll have a look at you. Well, they had a look at him and they told him he was all right. He took that field, and I remember watching that game when I was in France, and I had no idea what was going on with Chrissy. I knew he'd already had neck surgery previously before. He comes flying out the line like he does, like 100 mile an hour, gave everything. And he hits the 10 against Northampton, and he just hits the deck. And I remember saying to my wife, I was like, Chrissy, he's in a bad way here. He's in a bad way. And, you know, without taking too much time, the bottom line is he gets up, he does this, he scores a try, and he gets man of the match. They win the LV. Next day, oh, we've got your scan results, mate. Yeah, you're done. Nobody from the club, no one anything, right? He gets the accountant, pulls him in. Oh, can we go and have a chat in here? Take him into an away changing room. They're like that. Oh, there you go, mate. Handshake. There's your 6 months' pay. Thanks to the RPA. Thanks very much for everything you've done. That guy is 26, 27 years old. And again, you know, I would rather talk about other players other than me. I had a good career. I lasted until I was 32. You know, yes, I could have played more. Yes, I was playing well. But, you know, there's people out there that have got it damn sight worse. And there are lads even younger than what Chrissy was. But that situation with Chrissy, whether it be Exeter, whether it be Bath, whether it be Worcester, anybody, it's happening all over the place. So I'm not just labelling Exeter. But I tell you what, player welfare sucks. And the way that they think that, you know, they're contributing to the mental breakdown of potentially, I'd say, the majority of players that finish, unless you can just walk into something and you're that kind of guy and you're like, yeah, I was ready to retire. I was ready to retire. You know, how many people turn around to me and go, oh, you know, you're going to have to retire at some point. Yeah, but you're not prepared for it. You're not prepared for it. Yeah. And so, you know, we look, I could yatter on about this for hours, but you know, the interesting thing is there is an issue when it comes to injuries, what it does to you mentally, physically, but there is a bigger picture to it.
Yeah. And David, for you, like, let's start talking about that coming to the end. I know you battled, you thought you were fitter than you'd ever been. You went to Marjon for a fitness test, and it was just like, no, mate, you're done. And we'll touch on this with Clarke in a minute, but that feeling when you know it's all over from a refereeing point of view, what can if you can try and put some sort of words, I'm sure there's probably no words in the dictionary of how that is, knowing that it's done.
Wow. I just remember the complete desolation that I felt. And I just thought, I'm never going to do this again. And it literally broke me. I mean, I got in my car and I just sat there and I just cried. It was probably one of the most shocking realizations of my life, to realize that something I'd not taken for granted but worked so hard for and overcome a lot of barriers and obstacles. You know, Clarke talked brilliantly there about the issues around injury and recovery and what have you, and then to suddenly realize that that's gone, bang, like that. you're never ever going to do it again. And I don't think, even to this day, I don't think I really fully have ever really let it go properly.
I don't think I ever will, mate.
And like Clarke said, after that time, I didn't. The 2015 World Cup I hardly watched. I had a day out with some mates who went and watched England play Wales, and that, because it was my mates and we were all together, I watched the game, but I didn't watch anything else. You know, I wasn't really that bothered about it, and I didn't really watch any rugby at all. I tried refereeing local club rugby, and I just couldn't do it, and I knew I wasn't doing it justice. I wasn't doing the players justice. So I just thought, no, I'm going to walk. And I wanted to walk away from it completely. And then it was a guy locally who contacted me and said, look, get involved in some way in the society, the local referee society. Do some coaching, do something like that, you know. And I did that for a little while, and I enjoyed that, but I didn't enjoy the game, but I enjoyed the interaction with that individual, that referee, and working with them and trying to help them develop and improve. And I did that for a little while, and slowly I got back into it. But it does. Clarke is right. There are so many people out there that are not being supported post their careers.
Yeah.
That it's like a ticking time bomb at times. And I know, and one of the things that gets to me about this whole mental health and player welfare and well-being and stuff that goes on, and you've done a great job with what you've done online, but a lot is kind of, I wouldn't say so much as lip service, but there's too many stories like Clarke's that are still going on.
Yeah.
That make you ask the question, so what in reality is really going? Once, you know, you take Chrissy Whitehead there, once somebody says, right, there's your last 6 months paycheck, thanks very much, walk out the door, you get in your car, you leave the car park, who's ringing you the following day or the following week from the club and saying, how you doing? Is there anything we do for you? Do you want to get involved in this? Do you want to get, you know, whose role is that? And I don't hear that, and I'm not using that as a criticism. I just think we need to ask the difficult questions and come up with the solutions to say, what are we doing? And, you know, you look at all sports are in a very similar situation, but, you know, I know we're focused on rugby here, but it's something that for me, I think we need to do an awful lot more about, because we don't want to be sitting here having this conversation, or you have this conversation in 5 years' time with another player who at 32, like Neil, has had his career ended, and then he's looking back and going, you know, hello, I'm still a human being, I'm still a person. You know?
Yeah. And I think for me, one of the big correlations and why I started getting people to talk last year was actually when I spoke to people like Clarke, and there's a great guy here in Park called Ivan Bokke, who used to play for Griquas, played in the Currie Cup, and actually spent some time in France himself as well. The first thing all of these boys said was not the money. It wasn't the money. It was me. It was missing their mates. It was missing the smell of deep heat. It was missing the beer afterwards. And that is no different to the guy playing for the third team down in Bristol locally. And now, yes, okay, the RPA are doing stuff. But one of the things is, for us, Clarke's face telling me a story there. They're doing bits. All right, okay. But my point is, so should I say, is that even when I played, I didn't play at highest level after university or anything like that. But it was the working man during the week, or woman during the week. That was their release on a Saturday. That was their release on a Saturday from normal life. Doesn't matter whether it was in front of 82,000 at Twitters or just down the road at the local club. There's something so special about playing rugby. And the problem is there's no correlation. I feel like nobody's listening properly to what people are missing. And Neil has never once in the last 50 minutes mentioned money. Never once.
No, and
that's rugby, okay? And that's why this whole thing scares me to death, is that you end up in a situation with, like, Neil gets the perfect, I'm sure he won't mind me saying, twilight years contract down in France. He helps them stay up first year. He knows he's got another, and then bang, gone. And then we get to a stage where Neil, and I hope you don't mind me mentioning this, Neil stood on the edge of a cliff with a coin, trying to decide whether he's right for this world anymore. And you've had a cliff edge thing yourself, David. But
yeah,
Neil, what happens from you breaking the neck to you being at that point, and why is there not anybody there to make sure that that doesn't happen?
I think probably one, and you know, I won't delve too much into it, but I've got a couple of very close friends of mine going through some pretty tough stuff. You know, and it does make you sit up and think whether we've got families to go home to, wives, kids, or anything. You know, it's what I hate is when people turn around to you and go, because they know you're in a dark place, you know, and people turn around and they go, "You're being selfish." I'm not being selfish. You know, I got to the point where, you know, and what Rosie said, I'll just touch on it quickly before I come back. May I add, Oyo, where I was, Christophe Urios, in my eyes, will be the next French coach who's down at Bordeaux now. I have never, and I was only at that club playing for 2 years. And my first year, to be honest, I remember they took the piss because I can hardly speak English, let alone French. And I remember my first training session, they turned around, and I was obviously renowned, one, for being an idiot, but two, was being able to throw a line-out ball. I remember our first line-out session, he said, "Did the scrum half throw in at Exeter?" Because I didn't understand where the hell it was going. I may as well have kicked it in. But they stood by me. And I remember lying in that hospital bed. And the rules are very, very different in France. I had players come up to me, Jamie Robinson, who was at Toulon. And he goes, "Mate, when I broke my back," he said, "they literally came in the next day and went, 'Look, your contract, you know, it's gone. That's it. You're done. No help, no nothing.'" Now, yes, the RPA were fantastic with me. I think there are things which necessarily haven't done, but to be fair, the support I had with the RPA, the restart, counselling, and everything else, I cannot fault them. And you know, I want to say a massive thank you to them for their support and probably their continuing support. You know, I'm going to do an event down at my golf course. I've got like a big Southwest football golf thing here, and I'm actually going to do a charity which will be to help raise funds for Restart. So, you know, for me to say, you know, a little bit of PR, I'm not going to big up my business, but the fact is, you know, the RPA in that specific situation were incredible for me, and they were always at the phone. Josh is more like a personal friend to me. That's Josh Frey, and you know, he was just incredible. But you know, to sort of go back to where we were, and you're going to have to remind me what the question was because I'm that stupid. I've just got.
How did he get from the hospital bed to standing on the edge of a cliff?
Right, there we go. So yeah, sorry, it just reminded me when I was in the hospital bed. I remember I was having my second surgery, and in France you have 3 levels: G1, G2, and a G3. They came up to me, and within 10 seconds of looking at my scan, they went, "You're a G3, you're finished." That means I'm not coming back. I'm not playing. There are people that have tried to go to England because, again, to me, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. So the prop, won't mention him. There was a prop at Montpellier, G3, G2, G3. He's playing for Saracens a year later. You know, you mean to tell me that as a tight prop, his neck's okay? Those surgeons are looking at something. So, I mean, they turned around and I was a flat out G3, spinal cord problems, everything else. So we then moved back to the UK. I'm on my own. You know, I got my brother, I got my close friends, and as you know, mate, you know, we had a good group of friends back home. We had, you know, had some great friends, Cornish friends, and you know, they're still my best friends today. And we went from primary school to secondary school, and they're still there. They're your friends, and I'm sure as Rosie will you know, I'm sure he'll agree with me. You meet some amazing people along your path, your journey, and you will make friends for life. But there are other people, in my eyes, they're business colleagues, they're work colleagues, they're business associates. I wish I would have known that a little bit later, like further on in my career. But to go back to it, I moved back. My brother was running my business. you know, we parted ways, and I effectively took on a 26-acre site with no planning, big deficit, no income. I had some money in the bank from when I had insurance payouts, which I was very, very fortunate to do. But that, you know, that's one of the joys of breaking your neck and nearly paralyzing yourself. You know, I did insure myself well, which I may add, I had to insure myself personally. Again, some of my friends never insured themselves. And I had to do that personally. I didn't have a club saying, I encourage you to do this, you should do this. I took this policy myself. And it probably saved my life. I then went from there, moved away from home effectively in a sense, because I was down in Cornwall so much. I was making holes. I was spending, I won't say, you know, I was spending a lot of money. You know, it doesn't take a genius. You know, I've got 7 lodges and a 4-bedroom house conversion and 3 golf courses. You know, that takes some money, you know, so. And I did that myself. I'm away from my family. I was away from my wife. I was away from my kids. And I'd go home and I wasn't in a good spot. I was making a mess. I wasn't making any money. And then effectively, I got on a slippery slope, whether it be alcohol, other things. You know, when you're a rugby player, as Rosie will tell you, he's been there. We get told what we got to eat, when we got to eat. When you can drink, you're getting tested every week. I never had an upbringing when it came to doing recreational stuff. So when I was given an opportunity, did I have a go? Yeah, I did. Did I enjoy it? Yeah, I did. Did I get carried away? Absolutely. You know, and I'll never forget it. I was trying to completely convert my bungalow, turning it into what it is now, which is renting for, you know, it's fantastic. I'm completely fully booked over August. Sometimes I just, you know, again, maybe look for that little rub on the back, rub on the belly, which we all love. And I never got. I don't get it. But then you start dealing with that. I remember my brother found me in a heap, and he was like, enough's enough. I woke up that day, carried on drinking, took myself down to Portfleven, stood on the edge of a cliff. I was gone. Flipped a coin. My best mate did a similar thing. Flipped a coin. And yeah, it wasn't my time. And I actually said to Andrew, like earlier on when we were talking, I was quite open about it. I went for a walk. Obviously, I've surfed all my life. I'm staying down in Portfleven at the moment. I went for a walk. I just went into the Ship, like my favourite local bar from when I was a kid.
Yeah, brilliant place.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know it's bad when they turn the music off and they give you a boot to drink out until they realise you're local, and then they'll actually give you a decent glass to drink out of. The lights will go back on. It's taken some time. Yeah. I've got the dimmer on at the moment. They haven't quite turned the lights back on yet. But and it was a very, very surreal moment for me last night. And even while we were talking earlier on, I was getting goosebumps even talking about it. I said I just remember having a pint, and I looked up, and I had the sea to my left, which is my haven. It always has been. And I looked up, and there was this painting, and you know what it's like when we were kids. There's pictures of everything, all these paintings, all these famous pictures of the storms and everything. I have never, ever, ever seen this picture. And it was this one particular point of where I was stood. And I literally looked at it. And I said to you earlier, I was like, I looked at that. And when people say, oh, yeah, you know, I've got a potato cutting picture of a painting, I can look at that. I can look at that picture forever. And you're like, what are you on about? I swear to God, I couldn't take my eyes off it until the actual barman come over and he started having a bit of a joke. And I'm quite open about it now, hence the reason why we're even talking about this now. And the same as Rosie, you know. And he basically just said to me, and I explained to him, and he was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I said, is that picture for sale? And he said, no, it's the only one that's not for sale. And I sat there, and he basically, to be fair to him, he goes, here, mate, give it another day and I'll nick it for you. I went, mate, nick it for me. I'll sort you out. Free golf for life.
Yeah, free round of golf. Keep the samurai ball.
But I mean, look, just to move on, I'm very conscious that I'm sort of taking up a lot of this space. But obviously, it's a pretty serious subject, probably close to all of us. You know, and he said to me, he goes, do you not find that really hard to look at? And I said, no. I said, I think it's amazing, because I look at that now and I think where I am, yeah, I'm still on, you know, pretty strong antidepressants and things like that, but I'm in a much better place, trying to salvage everything. And I put a lot of pressure on my wife and my kids, and a non-selfish reason down here, trying to create something, trying to create the lifestyle that we had. Like Rosie said earlier on, you know, we are in a fortunate position, and obviously the players a lot more so than the referees. But, you know, we had a lifestyle, we had a certain lifestyle, and, you know, you want that to continue. And there's too many of my mates now that have finished, and you're in your 30s and you've got a screwed body, and mentally you're not around the guys and everything else. And then you have to start from scratch. There's no, oh, you know, you were going to finish at this time. You knew you were going to have to retire. Yeah, I didn't go to university and start my way up an apprenticeship, and now I'm some senior CO. I've got to 33, 34, and now I've got to start from the beginning. And, you know, for me personally, I'm very fortunate, very grateful that, you know, when I think about it now, yeah, there are times where it's hard, and I know there are people around me. I've got friends that are dying and things with illnesses, and have died of illnesses, and people say you're being selfish. I can't tell you, and I know I probably speak for Rosie and God knows how many other people that deal with mental health. I can't tell you what it is, how I feel that's in my head. And I can't have somebody telling me they know what I'm going through, because we're all different. We've all experienced different things. You know, all I would say is that I just wish, if someone I know that's going through a mental illness problem, I would just say, look, mate, I'm here. If you want to talk, come talk to me. But I wouldn't sit there and go, I know, because I don't know what they're going through. And
yes,
it's a very frustrating thing to hear sometimes. And I hear it. I'm sure, Rosie, I'm sure you're exactly the same, mate.
Yeah.
You know,
Was there anything for you?
Say we know what you're going through.
Yeah. Was there anything for you at the end of your career, David, like available from referees associations, RFU, anything? Or was it like, cheers, mate, give us your whistle and away you go? Because you ended up on the same place as Neil, not literally, but like the edge of a cliff, thinking about it, eh?
Yeah. I mean,
said, mate, I would have sat with you.
You could
I sat here listening to the Clarke sort of talking there and thinking, crikey, it's almost, you know, mirror image of my situation. You know, and that bit about it's not my time. You know, and no matter, it's very difficult to articulate why you take that step back and not step forward to sort of go over the edge. But go back to your point. No, there's nothing. It's very, the situations are very, very similar in the sense of you're packing for a variety of reasons, and the next guy comes along and he's like, who are you? You know, and the game moves really, really quickly. So, you know, the thing for me that I really struggle with, and I think Clarke will probably add testimony to this, is that you lose your sense of identity. So,
yeah, absolutely.
1 minute you're recognised and people know you, and let's be fair, everybody who plays top class sport or is involved in top class sport has got an ego of some kind. A lot of people manage it better than others. Some people, the ego is everything, but you've got an ego. And you can't perform in front of thousands of people in a stadium and hundreds of thousands on TV without having a sense of kind of look at me and wanting to be really good and do a really good job. That goes with the territory. You don't look like a mug, you know, and get things wrong and whatever. So when you do a good job, the sense of satisfaction is enormous. And you walk off the field for the last time, you're never going to get that. You lose your identity. And very quickly, you go to a game and nobody knows who you are anymore. You know, I can go to any ground in the Premiership now, and some people recognise me, but most people don't. And you can say, two ways looking at it, going, oh, look, what, you're trying to sound like, you know, Billy Big Balls or something. No, it's not. It's nothing about that. It's a fact of, at one point, I was out there doing my job, and I was doing it really well, and people recognised me, knew who I was. Now people look at me and don't know who I was. So it's like you've had a part of you taken away, and that's really, really difficult to deal with when you know that you were part of that, and you're no longer part of it, and people don't make you feel part of it. And the game moves on, and spectators change, and players change, and they get young. You know, new players come in. There's guys at Chiefs now, or Bath, or Bristol, whatever. If Clarke walked in the room, they wouldn't know who Clarke was. They wouldn't know he played, you know,
absolutely
200 times for Chiefs and did this and did that, and loads of times for Bristol and Bath and all the rest of it. You know, Douglas, who's that old bloke over there, kind of thing. He's not an old bloke, but you know what I mean. It's just like you go from being somebody and something to being nobody and nothing. And mentally, I don't think until you're in that situation. And goes back to what Clarke was saying about every situation is unique, and we all deal with it in our unique ways. Is nobody knows how that impacts that individual. Some people can just go, you know what, I'm done, great, I know where I'm going, I'm moving on to the next thing, I've got it all mapped out, and I'm away and happy, I'm in one piece, I'm great, I'm gone. And I did that. It's like chapters in a book. You know, you read the chapter, you move on, and you get to the end of the book and you go, that was good, right, where's the next book? Where sometimes you get stuck halfway through the book and you can't put the book down, and that's when mentally you've got to be really strong, or you've got to have a support system around you to help you. And similarly, you know, like Clarke, I was really selfish, and I missed, you know, so many days out with the kids and stuff like that, doing things with them and all those things, which I look back on now and I don't regret, because the selfish bit about you goes, how can you regret doing that? But actually, when you look back and you take one step further, make yourself a bit more removed, and you go, you selfish so-and-so. You know, your kids probably needed you or wanted you around, and you weren't. And you have to, again, that's something else you have to juggle with and balance, you know. And, yeah, all I would say is that trying to do all of those things at the same time as perform under pressure. Clarke talks about the line-out stuff, you know, and throwing in highly pressurised skill. Get it wrong, and you know what's coming. You know, same thing. You make a decision that you get it wrong, and it costs the team territory or field position, or there's a shot at goal, or you miss something and the team scores. And you're living that. You're dealing with that. You don't just get in your car and go, "Oh, stuff it," you know. So what? Crack on. You deal with that, and you have to deal with it because you've made that error, and you know you've made the error. And you've then got to process it, crack on and move on. And whilst you're in it, you do it and you move on. You put it to one side and you go, right, crack on. Let's, you know, in-game situations, you make a decision, you move on. Rightly or wrongly, you move on. Years later, all of that you've dealt with can just come flooding out, and it's a real challenge. Real challenge.
I completely agree.
Apart from in a lay-by, where are you now on your journey? Because it is a journey. I don't think it's something. I think, to put it frankly, people sometimes don't believe that it's a genuine health issue because they think broken arm, having the flus, having the flu or a cold is a health issue, or even worse diseases and viruses than that. So where are you now on this mental health journey? How are you coping day to day? And I know it sounds a bit cliche, but what advice would you give to someone who maybe, fingers crossed, watching this and actually goes, do you know what? I can do something about this. I can not beat it. I think sometimes people say, oh, how can you beat it? But I think it's probably Clarke, I'm getting the vibe from Clarke. It's more about dealing with it. It's more about learning to live with it. So where are you at the moment?
I think for me, your final comment there is I think you find ways to live with it and understand that you understand it internally and intrinsically that you have this illness, not a problem, an illness. And like any illness, you can usually find a number of different ways to deal with it, to cope with it, to manage it. So I kind of self-manage now, and I know the clues and the feelings I'm getting when I'm starting to slip, starting to feel as if things are getting too much for me. So I try and just go with, I don't try and force things when I'm getting into that situation. I don't try and think, right, I'm just going to crack on, plow on, and just get on with it. Because all you're doing then is you're getting into a spiral.
Yeah.
So what I try and do is recognise what's going on.
Yeah.
Give myself some time to just say, okay, you're not going to function properly, and you know what? It's not going to matter too much if you don't do that thing you were going to do that day. It doesn't matter too much if you leave it a few hours, but look after yourself and find whatever it is that you've got, that you've found that works for you. And for me, I still exercise, I still train, I still like to train, and I still use that as a way of kind of self-medicating and dealing with that. Or I'll listen to a podcast, or I've found multiple ways now of dealing with it, and I try and avoid any conflict situations that I know I may just spiral. And so my advice would be, get help. Don't be, and Clarke made the really good point about, don't wait for somebody to say to you, are you okay? And it's okay, all this stuff about ask a mate and it's okay to be not, and all that kind of stuff, brilliant. But it's got to start from within.
Yeah.
And I think we're at a point now where I think society-wise, if you've got a really good friend that you can go to them and go, look, you know what, mate, I ain't feeling too good. And start to talk about how you're feeling and what's impacting on you, that's going to be more powerful than you realise. You don't necessarily need to go and see a doctor. You just need to find somebody you can have that honest conversation and say, look, this is how I feel. It might not be your wife or your partner. It might not be your mum, your dad. Just find that person. You go, you know what? And we've all got them. That's the key thing. We've all got that person who you can go and talk to and just have that honest conversation. As blokes, we just need to recognise that and then take it from there day by day. So the first thing is open up to yourself, find that key person to talk to, go and talk to them, and just the way I first did it was I said, look, I don't want you to give me an answer, because I've not come to you for an answer. I've come to you for your ears, not your lips. Just give me your ears for a little while, and that's the best thing that anybody can give you to begin with, is give you their ears.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Clarke
Wife was calling.
I saw the wink earlier. Dinner's probably ready, is it? But yeah,
no. I'm down in Cornwall on my own. I'm going to the pub.
No alcohol ban there.
No,
yeah, Clarke, go for it.
No, I was just going to say what Rosie said there was absolutely, it's spot on. I think personally for me, yes, there's a lot of the cliches out there. It's okay to not be okay and all this thing. I think everybody's journey is completely different. I mean, in a sense, I've got to the point now, and we've touched on this. I don't care if somebody doesn't like me anymore. I don't care if my opinion accounts for nothing. I really don't. Yeah. I've always spoken my mind. People like it, people won't. But personally, what I would say to people, exactly like Rosie said, you need to first of all figure out, do you have an issue? Do you want to admit that you've got an issue? Did I want to admit that I had a problem? Nah. Big tough front row player. I caved from within, and I probably pushed away everybody that was close to me in order to try and provide for them. Am I struggling to try and regain that? Absolutely. Have I got a thriving business? Yeah. Which is fantastic. But in that process, because of the way that I was mentally and the way that we are driven as sportsmen, referee, anything to do with professional environment, you don't get there from not having drive, not having commitment. It's the same in business, it's the same as anything. People turn around and they're like, I could have done this. I should have played for Manchester United, but I did remedial. Yeah, of course you did, pal. Of course you did. Yeah. We've all done it. We've all got back up. You dust yourself off and you get on with it. For me now, that's exactly where I'm starting to get to now. make a decision, stick with it. Find something that you're interested in. Exactly like Rosie said, if you can do your rugby or you can do your sport, recreational level, if you can train. I'm in one of those really crap categories where I can wake up some days. I've got an MRI on Monday for my back. I'm left with an 18% disability from nerve damage. And don't get me wrong, I have some days where I can go out, I can swing a golf club with the best. There are other days I can't put my socks on. And I tell you what, I want to go to the gym. I want to smash out some weights. I want to go and train. I want to run. I can't even flip and put my socks on. So if you're telling me, like, mentally, how am I going to react to that? What else can you do? So, but my advice to anybody would be, like Rosie said, find someone that you confide in. First of all, you need to be able to admit to yourself. Don't let somebody tell you that you've got a problem. Yeah. It took too long for me. I'm too stubborn. I was too stubborn, and I had to listen to the people that were closest to me to tell me that I was in a bad way. And then I finally had to go, actually, I think you're right. I just couldn't admit it. I don't know if it was because I didn't want to admit it, which, being a man, all this tough stuff.
Stigma, because of stigma.
Absolutely. I think that's probably the best. I think that's probably the best way you can describe it. Stigma around it, mental health, men. I mean, I'm so glad all this stuff's starting to come out. I mean, we've gone through it all over equal opportunities and equal rights and everything else. What difference is it between the stigma between mental health with men and women? There isn't. But the men, we take so much crap as well. Don't get me wrong. I've got a wife at home that's incredible, that looks after the kids and does an amazing job. But we're the ones out there trying to provide. We're trying to do this. We're trying to do that. You think, I've been away from home now for over a week. It's not a lot. You've got people. Some of my best mate is a chief, and you know this. We're from a naval base.
Yeah.
You've got guys away a year, 18 months at a time. And that's why I don't want people looking at this. Oh, you want them to relate, but I don't want people going, well, you tried going away for 18 months. I haven't. I'd go away for a week, 2 weeks at a time. But, it's everybody has their own individual case. And to sort of just to conclude on it all, don't get yourself in a position where you're stood on a cliff and flipping a coin. Because, there's a 50-50 chance that it's going to go wrong. And you're never going to have an opportunity to sit here with your mates and discuss things like this. And this isn't an easy thing to discuss. This isn't an easy thing to go through. Life isn't easy. Everybody will say that. But the fact is we make these choices. We've got to stick with them. I think there is a massive thing around mental health, and I'm glad it's coming bigger and bigger. Do I want to be one of those statistics? I'm going to put my hands up, and I am. I'm still on quite a lot of medication. And if that's what I have to do to keep a smile on my face and to stop me punching someone in it, so be it. I've taken enough tablets throughout my career. But just to finish off, anybody, any advice that I could give, just try and keep that smile on your face. Try and find something that will put that smile on your face. If you can't remember, think back. Think what did put a smile on your face. Go out. Don't stay inside. Even if it's going for a walk, just do the right things. Don't hide behind something, whether it be alcohol, drugs, whatever it be, food, whatever it be. Just try and be the person and try to go back to where the happier times that you are, because they are there. They are there. And I look back now, and there are times when I think, Jesus Christ, is it that bad? But it was.
And the other thing is that there is a lot of negative people in the world. Absolutely. And you don't have to say anything to them. You can just walk away from them, because they drag you down just as much as. And I've made a conscious effort to stay away from negativity as much as possible. Whether that's naive with what's going on in the world, I do not know. But I know I feel a hell of a lot better for doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Guys, I could sit here and chat for another 2 hours, but Clarke's got a pub to get to. David's going to get, well, the police are going to come in a minute and wondering
a dodgy man in a lay-by.
Strange things this man is doing. I hope the windows aren't frosted up there, Rosie. But
no, mate, I've got to get these COVID samples to Swindon, so I better get cracking.
Oh, all the glamorous jobs, David. All the glamorous jobs.
Mate, get glamorous jobs indeed. Yeah,
you, Rosie.
But thank you from the bottom of all of our hearts for being so open and honest tonight.
Thanks, Andy.
If one person is inspired by it, then it was worth every one of the 80 minutes. Clarke, your honesty always makes me smile, and you've definitely given me a positive buzz tonight. And David, thanks so much. Don't forget, David, we are most definitely having that pint in Cape Town next year.
Fingers crossed, mate. Take care. Yeah.
Maybe we'll get Clarke over as well.
Yeah, we'll do.
Cheers, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone, all the comments on the side of the screen. Take care, drive safely, and we will see you again in a couple of weeks for another Drie Bokke show. Good night, guys.